Good evening. Can I thank the IET for this amazing award. I feel extremely privileged and blessed in so many ways for the opportunities I've had during my working life, but also just appreciating the recognition that goes with this award. I don't know how this occurred. I do wish to thank whoever thought of this, because I can't imagine people sitting down in Sydney or Melbourne or wherever the national group meet and suddenly thinking Rod should get this award, this guy in South Australia. So I rather think there are people here locally, maybe even people who worked with us in the department, who must have done a fair amount of work to put forward this nomination. I thank them, whoever they are, as I thank the South Australian Northern Territory Committee, as I thank the National Committee for enabling this to happen tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. I speak to you tonight as a rather simple but very proud South Australian. I will demonstrate my simplicity by the fact that it's all pretty casual for us as proud South Australians, in that I'm a product of Westbourne Park Primary School, Unley High School, before I went on to Adelaide University. My wife went to Westbourne Park Primary School and Unley High School. Our three kids went to Westbourne Park Primary School and Unley High School, and I now have 4 grandchildren at Westbourne Park Primary School. So it is we're a pretty boring group. We don't go very far from where we've been around for some time. I also stand before you as a proud engineer. I did go through Adelaide University, and I think it is relevant to recall that as Chief Executive of the department, I did attend a public meeting with the Minister. I'm going back a few years, obviously, when I was Chief Executive of the department, and it was a fairly aggressive public meeting. We made the presentations, the Minister was involved, and you go to questions, and this guy got up, a fairly aggressive style, says to the Minister, "Minister, I want to know who the most senior engineer you have here tonight from your department." And I sort of cringed, thinking I'm going to get asked some technical question on an issue I haven't dealt with for 40 years. But anyway, I nodded to the Minister, and the Minister gets up and says, "Well, the Chief Executive of the department's here, he's an engineer." And the questioner said, "Okay, thank you." And he sat down. I think the benefit for all you who are here who are engineers is that some people just want to know an engineer's involved, and that did seem to satisfy the questioner on that occasion. I am going to take the opportunity to talk through probably 5 projects. I could talk for quite some time about a lot of others, but I've picked my top 5, and then I'll go on and talk about 5 issues that I think are relevant for us as we go forward. I put this slide up because it does demonstrate one aspect of the job, and one that is significant. Because if you're going to make projects happen, you have to firstly find the funds. It is then a case of what you deliver, and it is also then a case of how you go about delivering it. And in finding the funds, there are representations that you make to agencies such as Treasury to get state funds, or you're making representations to the Commonwealth Government to get federal funding for a project, or you're working through Infrastructure Australia. Now, clearly, the funding decisions are made by politicians, both at state level and federal level. But can I say, unless someone puts the story together, unless someone comes up with the idea, and makes the case, you are not going to get funding for a project out of State Treasury. Pat Conlon, who I worked with for 10 years, 10 good years together with Pat as my minister, often said that one of the things he found about working with me is that Rod had ideas. And he reckons that's unusual in a public servant. And in fact, he also goes on to say Treasury, in his experience, is the place where you go for ideas to be buried. And that is a fair amount of what we were involved in the department, is finding ways to make the case to work against the arguments that Treasury would put up so that you could get funding. Or you're writing business cases to go to Infrastructure Australia and to make the case and to deal with federal politicians so that we can get funds to make things happen. And I'm pretty proud of this figure because I don't make any of these decisions. I didn't work as an island. I had wonderful people working around me and with me in the department, two in particular here with me tonight on the front table. And it is, though, part of what we can be proud of is that we took our state budget, our allocation for infrastructure, from under $1 billion a year to $3 to $4 billion a year for several years. And you can see it's tailed off, and that is an issue that I think we need to continue to be aware of as we head through into future years. So I'm going to talk about my top 5 in terms of projects, because all these projects were funded out of that process. It wouldn't be surprising that one that I will pick would be Adelaide Oval. And I was remarkably privileged to, before I left government, get involved in the delivery of this project. There are many things about this I continue to be proud of. Now look, I didn't do the architectural design, Cox did that. We engaged them. Engineering primarily by Arup, but other engineers involved. And again, a brilliant amount of work in the design. Balderstone, who became Lend-Lease, were the builders. Everyone should take credit for what we achieved here. But there are numerous things about this project. One is we had 5 clients: Stadium Management Authority, Sandful, SACA, and the Crows and Port Adelaide Football Club, all with their views on what should happen. But of course, technically, the client was us as the government, and we had to grapple with those interested stakeholders and make this happen. Not often in building projects of this scale, before you call tenders, do you have a budget set in legislation? You haven't called tenders, you know you can't exceed the budget. Secondly, we have absolute deadlines given to us on the project. You build a road and you run a week or 2 weeks or a month late, you just defer the opening. This one, there was an Ashes Test match scheduled in December. We didn't have an option of going to the Australian Cricket Board and saying we're that close, just put it back 2 weeks. Similarly, when we came to the start of the footy season, the game was set. We couldn't go and say we're almost there. So we delivered the project, and that's where Balderstone, Lend-Lease were brilliant. We delivered it on time, we delivered it within the budget. We made the season work for cricket. With an Ashes Test match, we made it work for footy. And we've got a wonderful outcome with Adelaide Oval. I don't take credit for the sunset, but I'm sure it's a feature of what happens there. But I talk about how these projects occur, not just what. And it is relevant for me. I've put a couple of quotes here. There's many I could put up. But the Oval redevelopment shows what can be achieved when resistance to change for the better is overcome. Because it is a fact of life, when you're dealing with significant projects, you do get opposition. And in fact, one of the things the media's reported is that the number of people opposed to this project would actually pack out the Oval if we asked them to go and attend. And we had all sorts of issues with City Council, with heritage groups and so on, but it has been a development embraced by Adelaide since that time. Another quote more recently, still in the Advertiser, and I like the way he finished this: the flawless execution of a development that mixes new and old. So we take some satisfaction out of that, and the outcome that was Adelaide Oval. That's project number one. I'm going to move through these fairly quickly, otherwise you'll be waiting for dessert too long, I suspect. But number two, the footbridge. The issue with the footbridge is that we had some people who said we don't need it. We had some people who asked me to make it 18 metres wide. I said, I'm not building a 6-lane road. We had a city council who said it should be 4 metres wide. We actually built it, you might be aware, 8 metres wide. We came up with a couple of designs, one which was lattice work and straight across, one which was this design that was the one that we built. I did get the opportunity to go into Cabinet and said, we hadn't called tenders at that stage. I said, I've got two possible designs. One I'm confident I will deliver within budget, the straight across lattice work one, and here's the other design. My comment was, if you want my view on what's best, I think it's this one. I think this sits well, but I'm less confident when I call tenders that I'll be within budget. Cabinet, to its credit, said go and build that one. So we did make it happen, and the footbridge has been embraced by the public since we opened it for the first footy game, even though of course we did also have it open for the Ashes Test match in December, and I think that's part of the how. Write in your tender documents that we want it open and used for an Ashes Test match, then come back and finish it and have it ready by March for the first footy game. Probably didn't cost us much, if anything at all, because the contractor, the tenderer, works around that, makes it happen. And I love the fact that that was taken halfway through the last quarter of the last showdown. Port supporters never leave early, they tell us, but you know it's not true, because there was no way I was going to leave early at that game and go out and take that photo. But again, I do give a comment out of the media. The Torrens footbridge has taken a utilitarian structure into a work of art, and I think it sits there. I think it looks good. It was delivered within budget, and again, there were architects, there were engineers involved in making that happen. I put out the third project of the 5 I'm going to mention, and that's the tram. We had the task in October 2007 was when it opened, but it was taking the tram from Victoria Square down here, past Parlamento's, a very significant event, Ralph, through to North Terrace, through to the university. Now, this was a project that was universally condemned. No one wanted it to happen, and I heard every conceivable criticism that you could get when we were working this project through. This was going to destroy King William Street. The city would be congested. It meant that we wouldn't be able to run the Christmas pageant, or if I did, we'll electrify Father Christmas. The trams wouldn't get around the corner here. The trams wouldn't stop here for Ralph. We did make that happen, Ralph, remember? And the trams wouldn't get under Morfett Street Bridge. Probably didn't help our case on a couple of occasions. When I was asked about the trams under Morfett Street Bridge, I said, well, they'll always get through the second time, won't they? I did have a city councillor who said, let me assure you, that tram will not go another metre or it will be over her dead body. I was asked about that and I said we did our bit. The city councillor's still there. You probably know who it is. She's still there. It was in the lead up to October 2007. That's what we did at the North Terrace, King William Street corner. I put that there. That's 2007. I put that there because 99 years earlier on the same corner, that's what happened. And sometime this year, you will see something like that happen again on the same corner, as the government intends to run trams right around into North Terrace East and run straight across. Anyway, October 2007, the trams travelled down here. The criticism I was getting changed overnight. It was, we should have known how popular it would be and we should have bought more trams because the trams are too full. But again, it was a project roundly opposed, it's crazy, and every conceivable comment was made. When we opened the tram, the media turned, as I said, the public turned, and in fact Rex Jory, I give him credit, put a full page article in the Advertiser at the time under that heading. I was wrong, and that was the outcome from delivering the tram project. I also put this here as a quote from the AHA because it does actually talk to how you deliver projects. And I make this comment because I think it's very significant for what we're seeing happen today. When we ran this project, and Ralph knows, we had 2 of our staff who went to every business. They walked up and down this street. They talked about what the needs were, deliveries, timing, and every business had in writing a plan that we were prepared to work around when it came to delivering the project. So much so that from the hotel perspective, despite the harsh realities for many hotels of a major construction site, at their front door, Rod's team remained responsive to the industry's anxieties by ensuring a very high level of communication, flow of information. Their patience was appreciated. Can I say the 2 girls who did that, they went from business to business. They came to me at one stage and said, Rod, we've been to every business. We've got a plan. There's only one business we haven't attended, and that's the one next door. It's called The Firm. And they said, we think you should go in and do that one. And I said, girls, you know I can't do that, because if I walked in with you, I'd be a bit concerned if they came and met me and said, oh, Mr. Hook, do you want your normal table? I wasn't going to take that risk. So they were never consulted, everyone else was. But we delivered the tram project and are able to make that happen. Project number 4, the electrification of the train line to Seaford. I mention this one because at my age, there are certain things you can do as a grandparent with your grandkids. Sometimes you can buy your grandkids their electric train set. I was able, when we ran the first electric train from Adelaide Railway Station to Seaford, to take my grandkids and say, you know, sometimes grandparents buy you an electric train set, come right in mine. And we did that for the opening of the tram. We took the trains down to Seaford, and always a disappointment to me. I had the money taken off us. We never got to Gawler. I think it's still on the agenda. And in fact, I had lunch with Stephen Mulligan the other day, and we both agreed that was a very poor decision of the government at the time, and still an issue that needs to be addressed. And I'm going right down the pecking order in scale of projects. This is not $100 million, a multi-million dollar project. But I put Britannia up here, and I do it for one simple reason. This wasn't a design that was delivered by a consultancy who we paid $100,000 to come up with a design. This was actually guys in our department based at Norwood who walked into my office and said, Rod, we think we've got a solution for Britannia roundabout. A consistent problem, a festering sore over many years. I asked them to show us what they had in mind. And of course their solution was take away one bad roundabout and let's put in 2 roundabouts. I went into the minister and I said, I think that our department's got a solution for Britannia roundabout. It's not grade separation, it's not lights, it's not $100 million or anything like that, it's $3.5 million. All you've got to do is sell the politics that the solution to one roundabout that doesn't work is build two. Minister, to his credit, and by this time it was Tom Koutsantonis, he said, can you come into Cabinet and explain it to Cabinet and bring the guys in who came up with the design, and Cabinet endorsed it and we built it, and it's worked remarkably well, and I think most people in Adelaide know that that is a good outcome. I touched earlier on how important it is to find the way to make things happen and find the way to achieve the funds. Part of that is how you approach Infrastructure Australia, how you approach the federal government. And can I say, one of the things that I was proud of in the time when we were delivering these projects is that Anthony Albanese, when he was the Infrastructure Minister in Canberra, would come to Adelaide and he would say to us, and he would say publicly to the media, you guys here are the best state at delivering the projects that we have anywhere in Australia. That was until we pulled the funding for the Gawler electrification. Then it was, you're the state that doesn't deliver what you committed to, and that caused us to have to give $76 million back to the feds. But if we're looking at the current infrastructure plan, and this is a document that talks priorities in February 2017. I can't get more current than that. And why I put this up here is that if we're talking about funding for the future, this should be ringing alarm bells. Because here you have the high priority projects on the infrastructure priority list for Australia, not one project out of South Australia. We take the next step down and we talk about the priority projects, projects that have their business case, high priority projects, 2 projects out of 11, shouldn't be too bad, except that that one's the federal government project to put money into the Alice Springs Rail to prop up Whyalla, and the other one's an iron ore mining project. Neither project is a state government project. We have high priority initiatives that is a state government project. That means it doesn't have its business case, it needs to have work done, and that's the Gawler rail line upgrade. It's been down there, has to be reworked. This should have been ringing alarm bells in February, and I suspect if I was there, we would have been in Canberra very quickly when this came out. And then you get the priority initiatives. There's 57 of them on the list, priority initiatives around Australia, 8 of them from South Australia, probably a reasonable proportion, 8 out of 57, except they all still need business case development done if they're going to get funding out of the federal gear. So they should have been delivering alarm bells in February, not in May, when the federal budget came out and South Australia started to complain that we didn't get sufficient funding. I want to give top 5 again on transforming the future, and again I'll do this fairly briefly. This has nothing to do with transport, but I've been saying this in talks I've been giving for over a year. Surely our top priority in South Australia is to deal with our electricity. Let's find a way to keep our lights on. And if we can't keep our lights on, at least find a way to deal with the cost of electricity. Talking to people here tonight, I think you would understand that's an issue. Find a way, keep our lights on. I think this is frozen, now it hasn't, it's gone on. We want the light shining in South Australia. It's the best illustration I could find. One of the things, and I'm actually picking up things I have an interest in as I go here, is that the government has at last accepted it is an issue. They've called for bids. They want to have batteries. They want to have new gas-fired power stations. In our business, we've got a link with a crowd called Pathian. We don't know how it'll go, but we've got our hand up, we're in the mix, and one of those who are trying to move in the space of doing something about our energy. I put there deliver outcomes that we can be proud of, and I'm moving here into the transport because I'm thinking of better roads, I'm thinking of grade separations. And by better roads, we've moved a long way ahead. And we actually build roads now, and that's Northern Expressway. The quality of roads we build these days are so much superior than what they used to be. But I also make a point, we do grade separations, and I thought I had one there that was, we don't build roads like that. Well, we do. There's far too many roads in South Australia that are like that. I actually gave up defending what we spend on road maintenance many years ago. We do not spend enough. Roads that are like that are a safety hazard. Roads that are like that are far safer for South Australians to drive on, and you see that on the Duke's Highway as you head down towards Melbourne. Wider centreline and decent shoulders and wire rope fencing separating you from the trees. So building better roads, delivering outcomes that make us proud, ensuring our logistics for premium food, for wine and mineral resources are as efficient as we can make them. If we're talking about the future of South Australia, can I say there is nothing more important than the efficiency of our logistics to move freight. Well, I make that comment, probably the welfare of our kids and the care for the elderly and transforming health might have some relevance there, but focusing on the infrastructure space, the efficiency and management of freight, whether it's farm product. We actually are dealing with some work for farmers on Eyre Peninsula who have the highest cost per tonne of grain anywhere in Australia to take their product to market. I think that's appalling that that happens in our state. We are involved in trying to put together, well, that's some of the mining projects. I think there are a lot more around, those that are coming, moving product from mine site to port. We're involved in what's called a Parlamento inland port, and it's just one of the initiatives that, again, as part of the business, trying to get efficiency here at Parlamento. You've got the zoo, you've got the freeway, you've got the rail line, and opportunities to make it more efficient to take product off the train line, perhaps at Parlamento, deliver it, distribute it. One of the things that is significant is that Big W are here at this site. They have a distribution centre. And again, the issue, how can we make this more efficient for firms like that and other firms to manage their freight, manage their exports in a way that makes sense? I'm going on to point number 4, embracing new ideas and innovation. And if I focus on the transport space, we're probably finding there are initiatives in all these areas. Electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles. Electric vehicles, I've read all the debate about the pollution, the amount of carbon dioxide per kilometre travelled. I know that the arguments are if you power up an electric car from a power station, a coal-fired power station, it's probably more polluting than it is to drive a petrol car. If you power it up from a renewable facility, then we are actually reducing the carbon dioxide per kilometre travelled. We will continue as a state, as a country, to move further and further into the space with electric vehicles, as we will with autonomous vehicles. It isn't that hard for us to conceive as we drive our cars and we can put on our remote, whatever you call it now, the speedo that keeps the speed until we put the brakes, whatever it was. We deal with that. We know there are cars that stay within lanes. We know that there are cars that will do a reverse park. Autonomous vehicles are coming, and it is something that's in the future. I'm still not convinced that we're clear on how this works out. It's a little bit to me like we had beta and VHS in our video recorders, two competing mechanisms, and we don't know who's going to win. I don't know all the different systems, how this works out. And I also have a bit of a concern. I'm not sure how autonomous vehicles go on non-autonomous roads when we have all sorts of drivers doing different things and potential for people to run out in front of these cars. Which brings us to autonomous vehicles that we do have an interest in, and that is associated with Skyway. There I am in Berlin. We're talking some prototypes of our autonomous vehicles. They're actually set up with a system where there are 4 motors, 4 wheels running on rail. Each one has a motor, each one has a brake, and so that's autonomous, except that it will run on a separate way structure that also is autonomous. I put that there because we still build our rail in Australia using 100-year-old technology. We build our rail on sleepers, on ballast on the ground, and we require corridors to run the rail, and we intrude on the whatever happens on the ground, we have the environmental impact. Where we go up and over, we build these, and we've done it. We build these huge structures with concrete T-beams, precast, made in a factory, transported to site, brittled to crane, put them up, and of course you have the joints wherever you've got a column, and a lot of the weight that goes into that structure is the weight that's necessary to support that structure, let alone what goes on top. So we've been through that, and we've had an opportunity to be the Australian agents for what's called Skyway. And Skyway, it's actually dealing with running on a rail going overhead. And there are a number of issues associated with this, whether we do it in a truss, whether we do it on a rail, whether we're mounted, whether we're suspended underneath. It is an opportunity to take a very simple engineering design for the engineers that are here, take a suspension bridge where you put a cable in tension. Instead of running the cable and putting huge weights on the bottom of it, run it through in a tube, a container, tension at each end, and use that as the basis for the rail to run a Skyway. Engineering-wise, it works. I've taken engineers from South Australia with us over to Europe to look at the design, so that I'm not the only one looking at this. You've got to go up and access the station, but you go across farmland, you don't need a corridor through someone's farm. You go over the top, you can work underneath. You go through the outback, you go over the top. We don't worry about a flood that comes once every 3 years that's 300 metres wide because you've gone over the top. You're actually taking product from mine site to port. You don't have to run a train requiring a corridor, unload at the coast, put it on a conveyor belt, take it out onto a jetty to a ship. You can keep going when you get to the coast to where the ship is and drop it straight into the ship. I've done some work, I've made some presentations to councils. Unley Council were pretty keen on what it might look like, and look, I don't think we'll get any opportunity anytime soon for a Skyway down our city streets, except that I can say, if it does happen, it fits. That's Unley Road, 5.5 metres up. You actually need, of course, to have your station work so that the public does get access to it, and I can go through showing Norwood Parade, Norwood Oval, further up, I did say to the Mayor of Norwood, Payneham, St Peters, are you seriously going to knock down your trees in the middle of Norwood Parade to build a tram line? He said, I know, I'm thinking of putting the trams in one half and putting the traffic in the other. So I said, are you seriously telling me you will cut your traffic by 50%, just like that? One lane each direction and one lane of parking? And is that what your businesses want in Norwood? He said, maybe we have to think about it. But that's Norwood Town Hall. But again, we've talked here about trams in Henley Beach Road. I mentioned the issue here of running trams down here and the process we went through. Can I say the department is currently wearing flak for trams in Jetty Road? I don't think they thought it through. Closing the whole of Jetty Road did not seem to be the way to go. I'm going to be interested to see how this is worked through. In Henley Beach Road, we put in cars there. In Prospect Road, where do we fit a tram line? How do we accommodate what happens in streets like Prospect Road? Or I come back to O'Connell Street if it comes from Prospect Road. We know that the government is going to do a tram in North Terrace, but again, there's Unley Road. I've just put those few thoughts there. I think our main interest in Skyway will be on product, freight product from mine site. I think we will get some interest there before anything to do with public transport. But I do also think we offer an option for public transport that fits, whereas I think some of the thinking is a little bit woolly at the moment on where we go putting our tram lines. I want to conclude with point number 5. It does go back to a little bit about what was said earlier in dealing with people. One of the things that I had with me in the department when I was there is wonderful people who helped me lead and present a culture program. These guys are here again tonight with us. It enabled us to go around and talk to the 50 work sites in the department. I actually still love, and this is a bit self-indulgent, I love at one of those work sites that we went to, this lady came up to me, I didn't know her, she said, I want you to read this. And I read it and she said, I've been in this department for 20 years, I'd never previously met the chief executive, and what's significant is you came to me. And I think caring for people, acknowledging people, working with people is a fundamental part of who we are as engineers, as leaders, and I also think integrity and ethics has to be very much a part of who we are. One of the things that I do get disillusioned, if I want to talk about the weapons of mass destruction that have an impact in Australia more than any other, and it's not the bombs in Syria or whatever, it is corruption, spin, lies, manipulation, and an attitude of blaming others, not taking responsibility for who we are and what we believe. And I think that is happening in our state far too much currently. And I would actually hope that whatever happens at the political, in the heads of the public service, that we can actually see people who are taking responsibility and demonstrating integrity and ethics. Can I say, when I started business with Mari 3 years ago, one of our early meetings is we came across a website which was called Unashamedly Ethical. And we sat together and said, let's establish the basis for the business if we're working together. And it does enable us to sign a certificate, and they send you a certificate, and it's part of signing that is there are certain commitments that you make, and there's a separate one for business, but basically to be entirely truthful, to be faithful to our family relationships. And I was delighted that Mari agreed, she signed it, I signed it, and we actually have our certificate hanging in the office, and the one for our business, that's who we are. So can I say again, thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you tonight, both on what I had the privilege of doing. I'm always conscious in giving talks like this that I know it sounds a lot about me, but I again want to remind you that what I was involved in, a lot of people made me look good. That's the basis of having good people with you, working with you, and I had that privilege, that opportunity. I thank the IET again for the award they've presented to me tonight, and hopefully there's a few thoughts there that can continue to drive us forward as we go through the next, 9 months, 10 months, we have an election, whatever happens in an election. I just have this commitment, this passion for South Australia. It's where my kids are, it's where my grandkids are. I want this to be a place that works for us all, and I don't want us to continue to looking at unemployment rising. There's so much that we would like to do and be positive about, more than just the Crows winning a premiership. Thank you very much.